Random disclaimer.
I already know there's a fair bit of controversy around this trailer, given its association with Pop, who doesn't actually seem to be involved with the project at all, and the recent blog posts made about Andrew Hussey, which are still developing. I really don't know anything about it, and this video is mainly supposed to focus on the trailer itself, so if the drama is something you want to discuss, I suggest that you do it elsewhere. Thank you. This is something that has been conceptualized by fans a lot. Like, there's other attempts to make Homestuck animated series out there, but this is official. This is written by Andrew Hussey. This is, like, officially licensed by Homestuck, and it is genuinely bizarre to see in this day and age. I think this is a really cool concept to make Homestuck's story a bit more accessible for a lot of people. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff surrounding it, but we're not going to be talking about that today. My main goal is just to go through and kind of examine what's going on here. First of all, this shot right here, obviously, this is John's house in John's neighborhood. We've seen this in the comic itself. This is pretty much just a recreation of that. It looks like they're going with this kind of like painted style for the backgrounds and stuff, which I think is pretty cool. The art style of this comic was kind of confusing to me at first, but I got used to it after a little while.
Happy birthday, bro!
Inside John's house, as you can see, there are incredibly blurred versions of posters for Face Off and Failure to Launch and various other movie posters that are around John's room. Obviously, these have to be blurred beyond recognition to probably not trip any copyright stuff, but I do think it's interesting that they decided to keep that concept in, and I wonder how they're going to handle it in the actual show, all of the pop culture references and all that. The voice we just heard say happy birthday, bro, is Dave Strider, who has a much higher voice than I would have expected. I've always headcanoned him with a much lower bravado. I'm not really sure what the purpose of this cloth is.
Beta come yet? I think it
or John picking it up. I can't really tell what that's supposed to be reference to, but obviously this is the Dave's birthday present for John. Also, the voice we hear speaking for John, which is still crazy to me, is Toby Fox, who has been known to do some animated voice acting work before. He was in, I think, an episode of Wee Baby Bear. Pretty much all of the voice acting in Deltarune, the little bits that there are for Spampton Antenna and all that. We get an example of a shot I really like, and they do this a couple of times in the trailer. Almost the entirety of dialogue in Homestuck is communicated through pester logs, aka like text messages to each other, so it's interesting to see how they're attempting to visualize that in this form. This isn't Dave calling John, or at least that's what we're led to assume, but it is visualized in that sense to make it work better in an animated medium, and I think it looks really cool. I actually really like how it's stylized here. We then get the shot of John looking out the window on his telescope, and the ever so familiar front yard of John Egbert is there. We finally get the shot of his face, and he looks pretty cool. Again, the art style of this really grew on me. I think it's a good way to interpret Homestuck in this medium. You can see on his phone it has his little Slimer, and of course it's on his shirt. They're staying very true to it, even with everybody being black and white, which I think makes for a very interesting, distinct visual style. Here we get John in his disguise in an attempt to hide from his father, as well as this painting on the wall, which I think is original for the show. I'm not sure if this is going to become a full series or not. It probably depends on how the pilot is received, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they structured the episodes as the acts get increasingly more complex.
You're not wearing one of your silly disguises, are you?
Again, not the voice I would expect for Rose. So far, I think Toby Fox is the only voice I would consider to really be fitting here, but I'm sure it'll grow on me at some point. Rose's room is decorated with the drawings she is known to have made back there. Those are, I'm pretty sure, ripped straight from the comic, as well as the stickers on her laptop being all the eldritch gods and whatnot she's known to study. We get this shot here of Rose looking out her window as the meteors start to land. We get this shot on John's birthday. There is, in the comic itself, he goes into a brawl with his father, and that is obviously what is being represented here. We get a look at the kitchen here, which is pretty accurately recreated from the comics itself. The early days of Homestuck, you like to use a lot of photorealistic images, just bit crushed to fit inside of the comic. Those have just kind of been recreated in the same fashion as the art. We see this on the table here, which this is most likely a Betty Crocker box, something that becomes very important to the story later on, which again, I'm not sure how they're going to adapt a lot of the licensed elements. Obviously, there's a lot of things they probably can't use, so it's interesting seeing these more minimal versions of those objects. We get an example of the strife that is about to happen. John here is holding a hammer, which soon his kind will become hammer kind, so this is obviously alluding to that. Then we get this crazy shot of the cake blasting John back into the wall with kind of a bizarre thing going on here. The word that shows up is docimite, though in the comic, I believe it's Dote Smite. I'm not sure if this was just a mistake on the artist's part or if they changed it for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but it's cool that they're representing the Strife system in a way like this, giving it a really cinematic kind of like anime battle feel with the dust and the blue impact frame here. We have this shot, which I am a big fan of this. This might be my favorite shot in the whole trailer. Dave physically reaches out of John's PDA to redirect his head to look at the meteor falling from the sky here. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of creative interpretations of things like this, so I'm actually pretty excited to see the direction that pilot takes. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that is really hard to communicate to an animated medium, but seeing these little hints of how they're trying to do some of that gives me a lot of hope. And John's phone has a little tag here, which is the bunny that he receives for his birthday and becomes a very important part of the story later. Now, I don't believe Dave was initially aware of this meteor in Homestuck. It seems like there's some things they are changing to possibly streamline the story a bit, which I don't mind. Every time an adaptation comes out that changes something, I always see people get unnecessarily upset about it when it's like, you could just go and look at the original thing. I think an adaptation is always a chance to do some things over, and I think there's a lot of things they're going to probably streamline with Homestuck's story to make it a little bit understandable for a larger audience. Now, this is kind of interesting. The puppet that John's dad gives him, or the Harlequin, or whatever you want to call this, seems to already be imbued with some sort of cursed energy. I'm not sure if it has combined with the sprite at this point. I don't really know how we're supposed to be interpreting this. It is also possible that this is just a representation of John being scared by the doll itself before it has been prototyped. I'm not sure. They could be going all kinds of directions with how this works. Here we get a very classic looking shot of Strife starting. I'd imagine this is going to become kind of a standard for when battles start in this soon-to-be animated series. This animated series has chose to represent this in a pretty literal way, with the cards appearing and then the attack physically manifesting, which I think is just so cool. John here slashes the cake with the hammer, which gives us this awesome impact frame of him getting hit by it. I have a feeling we're in for some really cool interpretations of battles that we haven't had before. And then we get kind of a money shot here. Carcat is here for some reason when he's not really supposed to be important until quite a bit later. Something tells me they put this in here just to show that, like, yes, the trolls are going to be a part of it. I'm not exactly sure if Carcat is going to end up entering the scene a bit earlier than he's supposed to. Trolls aren't introduced in the story of Homestuck until, like, Act 5. I don't really know if we're going to be seeing Carcat in this pilot. Maybe at the very end as a bit of a teaser, but this is still really cool. I love how he looks here. We get this really cool shot of him looking out the window to Alternia, switching to, by the way, someone we don't really hear in this trailer. Apparently Jade is voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy, who is the Tails voice actor. We zoom into the bulb here and we go back to the shot of John fighting with his dad. I think these are the smoke pellets, and this is Colonel Sassacre's tome. In the original battle that John has with his dad, this is how he ends it. They're so high in the air right now, I'm not really sure how that's going to be interpreted, but I am almost certain that is what is being referenced here and is about to happen in the scene itself. There's so much sauce in this. Look at this. Look at these impact frames. Then cutting straight to this shot of John bursting through the wall and leaving a perfectly Homestuck John shaped hole, which I think is really funny. It's also important to note that there is a hole already there. Presumably the second time he breaks through this wall, we get this really cool green background with the Slimer in the background. This is another reference to the comic itself during his first fight with his dad. This is Hussey, Andrew Hussey. Homestuck has always been a very self-referential comic, and Hussey here is still in the same instance of breaking the fourth wall, which if you know about the comic, you'll know more about what that exactly means. This shot is another recreation of a shot from Homestuck where you see Hussey working on the comic as it is. We get this Hussey jump scare here, and then we cut to what presumably I think is, yeah, the Spur Beta. We actually see the case of it. I don't think this is something that we normally see in Homestuck, so it's pretty cool. We have the salamanders and other creatures that John is about to encounter. And then, of course, we have the iconic Sburb logo, Homestuck logo. This SN down here is presumably in reference to Skynet. And yeah, that's all we get for Homestuck, the animated pilot, coming at some point. Also, I do want to say the music in this trailer is made by Toby Fox. I didn't mention that at the front. It's safe to assume he might be composing music for the series as a whole. They might have other composers involved, but I would not be surprised if Toby Fox was working on a lot of the music there. But yeah, that's my frame-by-frame kind of analysis of the Homestuck animated pilot trailer. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what comes from here. This was never supposed to be the first video on this channel, by the way. If you're interested, you can subscribe for Deltarune and Undertale related stuff. I mostly intend to be talking about like theories and interpretations and all kinds of like predictions for future chapters of Deltarune and other stuff like that. Probably some Undertale 10th anniversary stuff coming up. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time I make a video for this, which might like take a month or something. I don't know. Bye!